a top global marketing podcast listened to in more than 100 countries, live streamed on social media, and broadcast on DBTV. Christoph chats with industry leaders to help your company tell better business stories. Here's today's episode.
Hey, business storytellers. Thanks for joining me. Let's talk about what should be included in a content calendar. So first of all, what is a content calendar? It really comes back to showing what you're trying to work on, what's in production, and what are some of those topics that we want to cover. So for example, I have a list of articles that I'm trying to work on. I have a list of podcast episodes I have on deck. Typically, I have guests on the show. So I actually have that directly in Calendly. I don't actually write that in a spreadsheet. And of course, back in the day, that's how people did content calendars, in spreadsheets. Then people tried to emulate what they were trying to do in their software tools. And there certainly are some decent ones out there. But what actually needs to be in a content calendar? So let's just kind of peel back the onion, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I'll just give you an example of some of the things that people have said that always should be in a content calendar. What's the difference between a content editorial calendar? I'm not sure there's a huge difference, quite frankly. But for the purpose of what we're talking about, we're always talking about corporate content marketing or creator content marketing, right? So like you're trying to create content to stay top of mind, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of the funnel certainly are all important, but a lot of times that includes blog posts, maybe a podcast, maybe a live stream, something like that. So just something to think about. But here's some of the things, and this is just one of the top hits. Topic or title, format of your content, publishing date, distribution, status, target audience, goal, key messages and keywords, and more. And I do agree with some of those things. And I will, this is actually from Pinterest and over Nancy Casanova, content strategy and graphic designer. She shared those things on there. And a lot of those things are what people are looking for. But I think the biggest waste of time is to even worry about publishing date. And here's the reason why. Because your content strategy, your content marketing should be continuous. It should happen all the time. And this is sometimes where teams struggle just a little bit, because when do you take a break? When do you just like chill? When do you, not publish for half a second? So that's kind of where that comes in. So you do want to find that right balance too. But the things that I really think that really, 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 really should be on your content calendar are as follows. I wrote them down here just to make sure. Your ICP, ideal customer profile. Who are you trying to reach? And this is especially important, on when you have multiple people and they're slightly different, right? And you're creating content for those different personas. On the flip side, I also don't think you need to overthink this. So, for example, if I am trying to reach, so let's say I'm trying to reach VP, head of marketing at larger companies who are trying to expand into content marketing, right? So not a small company, not not something like that. Not somebody who's looking for freelancers, so to speak, but somebody who's actually trying to expand their marketing team, and they're at the stage where they have time to build that content marketing function correctly, not just slash. So let's say that's who I'm trying to reach. How much detail do I really need? And if that's the only persona I'm going after, like, do I really truly have to call that out every time? Do I really have to copy and paste that persona in? Like, this is who I'm trying to reach. It doesn't change. It's the same person, same type of person all the time. So we don't have to overthink it, right? So if it's like maybe just on the top, maybe there's a link to who we're trying to reach, who the persona is, or maybe you just know. And I know there's companies out there, they're trying to sell you their tools, and oh my goodness, if you don't talk about the persona all the time, you can't create good content. Of course, you want to know, but like, make it easy, right? So just make sure that it's top of mind, but don't make it a burden. And it does all add up. I think the next thing that really needs to be on there are the priority topics. What are we trying to rank for? What are we trying to use? And I do still think there's an important piece to any content strategy, to any content calendar that includes SEO. There's no reason not to put your podcast video on your website and trying to rank for something. None at all. Like this video, I could probably put this video on the website and try to get it to rank for just like this specific topic. And that's it, without any other comments, without any other, not any other comments, any other content, right? So like, I'm not going to write a 500-word article or 2,000-word article. This is it. And, maybe the video will rank, maybe the page will rank. So it's just something to think about on the different content types. But in general, I think you want to make an SEO play. So that means we're looking at what are the terms people are searching for? What are some of those priority topics? At the end of the day, we can't create content for everything, right? Like when I look at an SEO analysis, there's a gazillion angles you could take, a gazillion. And that sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you just have to get started, quite frankly. But like this topic, what should a content calendar include, is actually like people actually search for that, right? So like, let's just be very transparent about how I got to this topic. So I was thinking about, somebody mentioned editorial calendars, and I was like, editorial calendars, okay, content calendars for my purposes. And I was like, okay. And I've worked with them for, I don't know, decade and a half or something like that. And I've seen some good uses, some not so good uses, and some that were in the middle. And so I was wondering, like, what are people interested in? And that is actually one keyword. What should a content calendar include? And so these are my 4 things, right? So number 1, ICP, you want to be sure you know who you're trying to reach, why you're trying to write for them, the priority topics, data-driven. Look at what are people searching for. That is the only reason I'm doing a topic on this exact title, because the data showed me that people actually look for that information. Now, I don't know who those people are. I don't know if those are people, like they might be the intern in a company, right? And the boss says, hey, create a content calendar. And, they had to Google it. So that is not the target audience I mentioned earlier. So just something to keep in mind, that sometimes you don't really know who is searching for it, but it's a start, and you have to start somewhere. And sometimes the searches are very clearly not by your target audience, they're by a related segment, but just look at the data. Think about what is already being searched for, what do people care about? And also, even if you don't make an SEO play, it gives you an idea what people are interested in, right? Because if there's 100 searches a month for a specific topic, there's interest. So even if you use that information for social posts, for example, it could still be helpful like that. So then what I always do, because for me, it always comes back to the create once, publish everywhere model. So when Nancy over here talks about the format of your content, I know why she has that in there, and I think that's actually, it's good to have in there when it's not always the same process. But I like all content to have some kind of SEO angle. So for example, I want to look at the keyword targets. What can we rank for? What works? And then you want to outline that so people remember when they read the content, when they write the content, when they work on the content, and then they can massage the content and build the content around those keywords. I think one of the worst strategies in the world, honestly, going forward, maybe it worked 10 years ago, is where you have one person writing an article with like a rough idea of what the keyword challenge is. And then you have somebody completely different after the fact, optimize it for SEO. Like, oh, we don't have to like break up everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, have a strategic approach, have it integrated, and write with the SEO in mind. And let's be honest, what should a content calendar include is not a difficult key phrase for me to work into this content, right? It goes in the headline. I talk about it every once in a while. And the end, like nobody needs to optimize that. And I should use best practices as the content creator to begin with. But as you're working on this, you want to know what the targets are. And sometimes there's a main target. What should a content calendar include? I also have in here editorial calendar format. So maybe I should talk about that. What should it look like, right? What is the editorial calendar format, content calendar format? Similar, very, very similar things. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So at the end of the day, the keyword targets are important. The questions people are important. So the creator knows what kind of questions to ask of the subject matter expert, and also can write content to answer the questions that people have. So really, really important to think about that. And then to actually make it work is talk about the unique angle that you have, right? So when I'm looking at what should a content calendar include? Nancy, check her out on Pinterest, Nancy Casanova. She is, as far as I can tell, like one of the few people that actually rank for that on Pinterest. Good for her, right? I mean, she's a content strategist, so certainly it makes sense for her to rank for that, but nobody else is even ranking for it. So, what is there that I can talk about that is a unique angle? Now, my opinion, hopefully that has come across already. I have a little bit of a different opinion. I don't think of a content calendar as like a production tool. This is the publishing date. This is when distribution starts. This is when that starts. Here's my opinion when it comes to dates in a content calendar. I think they're the biggest waste of time because people don't meet them. People like sometimes they're too quickly, sometimes they're too slowly, So like who cares when it publishes? Like, just keep publishing all the time. Keep putting out good content. And whether it's done today, when the deadline is tomorrow, or it's done, or everything is done early, like, who cares? Like, just keep publishing on a schedule. I think part of the reason we have these staggered publishing schedules is because back in the day, stuff got printed, right? Stuff got shipped. I mean, even when I was in B2B journalism, right? Like we shipped a magazine. But for the website, it makes no difference when it publishes, like none. Like if I have 4 articles done today, like let's say I wrote 4 articles and those articles are now approved in one swoop. I'm going to publish them right now. Like they go top of my list. I just get them published. Like who cares when the official publishing date in some Excel spreadsheet was? Doesn't make any difference at all, right? None. Like we're not shipping it to anybody. Now, where the publish date makes a little bit of a difference, and again, it's not the publish date here either, but like on social media, right? You want to spread things out. You want to hack up the content and then you want to spread it out. But that doesn't need to go into like a separate spreadsheet. Like it doesn't. Once the content gets it, because also this is dependent on when the content is actually approved. So if my publish date, let's just kind of walk through this for a little bit. So if my publish date is March 17th for this content, but it doesn't get approved until March 19th, and I already have all the social stuff written out when it's going to be published, it's like the biggest waste of time to even put that together. Biggest waste of time. Now, if you have just an overview, there's a little bit of I think there's an advantage or there is a reason to maybe just have like a high level content calendar, right? In January, I will focus on this topic. In February, I will focus on this. In March, I'm going to be talking about AI. So every podcast episode is about AI. That's a little bit different, but that actually falls into the priority topics, right? What are the priority topics that we should cover? And that's one of the 4 things that I think need to be on a content calendar. But publishing dates are not one of them. Content gets approved, publish it. Boom, on the website. Done. Then the distribution to social media follows from there on a cadence, right? So you don't just have to publish all the 4 articles to social media the day they get published on the website. Nobody has that expectation. We're not a media company, and it's fine. Just schedule it whenever it can get scheduled. I mean, that's really how easy that is, and kind of space it out and schedule it, like in a tool like Agora Pulse um, or HubSpot or whatever you use. Hootsuite, doesn't make any difference, but just schedule them out, or even natively. Now you can schedule natively in LinkedIn, for example. And I actually do that because it's relatively easy. You can tag people and whatnot. Um, but focus on what are the keyword targets? What are people asking about? What do people want to know? And then basically cover that content. And then you want to have those unique angles. What is something you can say that's unique? Maybe other people disagree with it. Maybe you have a different experience. Share your experience. But here's the thing: no company, no creator, nobody will continue to rank if they just regurgitate the same old crap like everybody else. So keep that in mind as you're working on this. Where would you put, what should your editorial calendar format be? This is a lengthy debate. I personally just use a Word document now, or a Google Drive document, Google Docs, right? And like, here are the topics. Here's how we're going to work on them. Here's all the topics. So let's now focus on the ones that need to bump to the top of the list. Even if you have a high power team, I think that model works. People just pick off the list what the next high priority item is. So if I have one person creating content, if I have one person filling the content calendar, it might, take this long. If I have two people, it might be able to do it twice as fast. So I think that's how you do it. And then the other thing, when it comes to content formats, I think email should be part of it all the time. Like on my blog, it automatically just sends to people. So I guess some people could argue that's why you don't publish 4 articles back to back to back to back. But I don't think anybody really complains about that. And I think sometimes it combines it. If you don't have that model and you use your content in a nurture campaign later down the road, like, who cares when you publish it, right? Like, the nurture campaign emails don't go to people at the same time anyways. So, like, what's the point? So yeah, those are the 4 things I would recommend to have in there. ICP, if you're very sure of what it is and you don't need to call that out specifically on everyone, fine, but do call it out somewhere. Priority topics, that's number 2. What are the things we need to cover, and in what order? Like, when I see these content calendars, these editorial plans, where people put down, like, we're going to work on this for the next year, like, and then they don't have enough staff, then they have other priorities that bump in, and they never get to it. It's like the biggest waste of time. Like, why even go through all this work to put this together? What? Like, creating a deliverable of a content calendar and not doing anything with it, what's the point? Like, I'm sorry, like, seriously, what's the point? Like, that's not going to drive any business results of any kind, right? Like, maybe for the person, maybe if you hired somebody to do a content calendar, it drove business results for them. But like, for you, it's not going to do anything. So you want to make sure somebody does something with that. Priority topics, keyword targets, especially when SEO is your centerpiece. I still think it should be most of the time. And then the unique angles. What's different? What can be said that's unique and that other people have not necessarily covered yet? Now, I say that like that, and I don't mean you have to, like, overthink it. Like, you don't have to go look and look and look and look and do research for like the next 8 weeks, but certainly look what other people are saying about the topic and see if you agree or disagree. And, like, for example, what I've been pulling here, I must have closed it. No, with Nancy Casanova's graphic on Pinterest. Like, I think it's great. That's what a lot of people want. And that's fine. But what I'm saying as well is, if you use a create once, publish everywhere model, and it basically follows roughly the same workflow every time, you don't need to worry about the format of the content. It's the same. Like, you're going to follow the same format, and sometimes you adjust it. So, like, something to keep in mind. Or the publishing date. I think the publishing date, like, I just think it needs to go. It makes no sense, because hardly anybody ever makes those, to be quite honest. But most importantly, I think where people should spend most of the time is to figure out what are the unique angles. So once you have the priority topics, once you have figured out what you should do, what is it that you can talk about that's unique? What is it that you can say that other people aren't necessarily saying? So yeah, I would put it in a Word document to get started. If you can tie it into your entire workflow and just create in one system. That's another way to do it. I think that's actually harder than it sounds, but that's kind of, I think, ultimately the goal. So yeah, what should a content calendar include? Those are the 4 things that I think it should include, and especially if your goal is to drive results. And ultimately, that's what content should do. Content should just not be done because somebody wants it to be done. We should have it done to drive some kind of results, and to do that, ICP, priority topics, keyword targets, strategic ones, and finding your unique angles. And then, of course, this is more on the content creation side of things. Then make sure you create the content in a way that's actually engaging and pulls people in. I'm Christoph Trapp. I'm out.
Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review the Business Storytelling Show on your favorite podcast platform, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. See you then.